Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Samach Vov 66. Daf Samach Vov in Kiddushin, as we learned for Achim Kol Basis Row. We're about 10, 12 lines down on the page. The last word in line is Iboilahu. More asks this question: Iboilu Ishto Zinsa B'Eid Echad B'Shosek Ma'an. Now we're not talking here about a case of a sota. A sota has to have specific rules that he warned her. Then she went into seclusion with two Adam. One shita was that you had to have two people for the warning, two Adam for the going into seclusion, and then then the process is automatic. You have to go through. Either she admits that she was mazana, in which case she loses her ksuba and he divorces her. There was no Adam on the bee itself. There was Adam who gave her with Adam and Asra that saw her, warned her, don't commit adultery, and she committed adultery in their Adam. Of course, she would be killed. Based on that and nothing. The sota is the questionable one, but it has to have that process. Here we're talking about some a case where, let's say a man suspects his wife of adultery, so he can divorce her. It's up to him. He can divorce her. Bisman Azeh, we want her consent too, but in the time of the Gemara, according to the Torah, he can divorce her against her will. So if he suspects her, he can do what he wants. The question is this: is he obligated to divorce her? Just on a suspicion, he's not obligated to. The question over here the Gemara raises is: let's say there's one there's one witness that she committed adultery. Is he obligated to divorce her based on that? So this is a question. He's quiet. He doesn't say anything. If he denies it, he says, you don't know what you're talking about. But let's say he's quiet. Is he like Moda, as we talked about yesterday, is a shtika kodah? If he's Moda, he doesn't know. He doesn't say anything. Mao. Is he obligated to divorce her? Abai says the aid is believed. If he doesn't deny it, he's quiet. The aid is believed, and he's obligated to divorce her. She's usher to him based on one witness alone. Can the that one witness forbid him from staying with his wife? Sorry, what are you saying?
Who's quiet?
The husband. The husband doesn't know. He doesn't answer anything. If he denies it, it's one thing. If he agrees with it, fine, then he should divorce her. He's quiet, doesn't say anything. Is he obligated to divorce her based on the testimony of one witness? It's not a case where she can be killed. There's only one witness, right? Even if there was Adam who warned her, but there was only one aide who saw the adultery took place, he wouldn't kill her based on that. But if there's one aide who saw it, is he obligated to divorce her? Bai says he's believing obligated to divorce her, and he can't stay married to her. Rav Amar Einanam. We don't believe one witness. This is a matter relating to sexual relations. When it comes to forbidden relationships, you need two witnesses. So we have this machlokas between Abai and Rav, and clearly, in a passage like Rav, you can't forbid a woman on her husband to her husband based on the testimony of one person. We're going to try to bring proofs both ways. Abai says, yes, the one aid is believed, barring being contradicted by somebody else. Rabbi says, no, one aid isn't enough. How do I know this? I'll tell you a story. There was a blind person. He was he came to Shmuel's yeshiva, and he would repeat the Mishnayos before Shmuel. In other words, he learned by Shmuel. One day, he was delayed. He didn't come. The blind man didn't show up. So Shmuel sent a shliach. He was the one who said over the Mishnayos, maybe for the other Talmidim. Whatever the case was, he didn't show up. So Shmuel sent a shliach to look after him. When the shliach went, when the shliach went one way, the guy came the other way. In other words, the blind man was on his way. He took road number 1 to get to the yeshiva, and the shliach went to look for him with road number 2. So they missed each other on the road. He took an alternate path, and the shliach came to the guy's house. And when he came to the guy's house, the guy wasn't there because he was on his way to the yeshiva via the other way. But he claimed to see his wife having adultery. In other words, when the guy was going to yeshiva, his wife committed adultery. That's what the shliach came. He also when the shliach came back, after realizing that the man wasn't home and he must have, he had gone to the yeshiva via the other way, Amar Ishto Zinsa. He said his wife, he claimed that the blind man's wife committed adultery. Also coming to looking for Shmuel, Amar Lei, So there was a question now. Is the blind man obligated to divorce his wife based on the testimony of the one shliach Amalei? So Shmuel came for Shmuel paskin like this. If you believe him, zilafka, so you have to divorce her. If you don't believe him, you shouldn't. My love, what do you mean? What do you mean by you believe him? Is he a valid witness? He's not a goslin. He's not somebody who's a disqualified witness because he's a gambler or he steals or he does some other avera that is known that you can't trust him. In other words, if you believe him, if he's a qualified witness, you got to divorce her. That's how Abaye says. So Abaye said, you see, based on the testimony of one aide, Shmuel said you should divorce her. Rava says, no. That's not what he meant. He didn't mean to say if this guy is a valid witness, he's not disqualified. He's a kosher witness. You have to divorce your wife. Rava said, this is what he meant to say. If you trust this guy yourself as if there were two witnesses, then you should divorce her. Below, if you don't feel he's so trustworthy and you can't rely on him, maybe he didn't see it exactly, maybe he didn't have his glasses on, maybe he thought it was somebody else, whatever it was, if you don't believe him like two witnesses, meaning you have to have tremendous belief that this guy really related it properly. Not only that he's a qualified witness, but you trust his testimony inherently. You absolutely trust his inherently. If you don't trust him inherently, you don't have to divorce him. As if to say that the one witness alone cannot force a woman out of a marriage. He just said, listen, if you trust this guy and you believe him, you should divorce your wife, which is the case of anybody. If anybody strongly suspects his wife of adultery, he shouldn't stay with her. It's not a case, again, it's not a case with all the qualifications of a sota. You have to have warning, and you have to see them go into seclusion and all that other stuff. He just suspects her. If he suspects her, he should try to verify it. And if he believes this guy, then you should divorce her, but he's not obligated to divorce her. That's how Rav and Abaye interpret the story in two different ways. Or Abaye says another proof I have. Yeah. The witness in that case, well, the witness wouldn't be, that's a good question. Yeah. If he was, put it this way, if they certainly, the rabbi certainly would not like him to marry her because we've given this. If the one witness really forced him out of the marriage, then in a case like that, let's say 2-8, and we've had that before. 2-8 come and say her husband died. Based on that, they wouldn't be allowed to marry. But over here, the question is, according to Abaye, yes, that could be. Your question is good. It could be that according to Abaye, that the witness forces the wedding, forces the marriage apart, forces the divorce. He shouldn't be allowed to marry her. But according to Rava, the one witness accomplishes nothing. One witness is just, doesn't mean anything. He doesn't have to divorce his wife based on that. If later on, 10 years later, he strongly suspects his wife and he divorces her anyway, then that witness would be allowed to. It depends on if the witness has the power to dissolve the marriage, then he wouldn't be allowed to. But if he doesn't have the power, like Rava says, one witness doesn't do anything, then he would be allowed to. Because he was the one who destroyed it. Maybe he was a good guy. Maybe he just, whatever. We don't know. We don't know. One witness can't do it. Yeah, maybe he's the one, right? Then why would he testify? Amar Abaye. So, right, it depends on how you hold. According to Rava, the one witness can accomplish nothing. And therefore, he doesn't force her out of the marriage. According to Abaye, that the one witness would, then he wouldn't be allowed to marry. Amar Abaye. But again, let's say he did marry her. The קידושין would be chal. Then Torah, he was not forbidden to marry her. Yeah, and he found this one. Yeah. That's right. So the was challah. How do I know? Another proof that Abaye has. A famous story of Yanai HaMelech. Yanai HaMelech was a bad king, went from the Chashmonon. What was the story? The Tanya Ma'aseh Yanai HaMelech story. He went to that place. It's called Chuchlis in the Midbar. And he conquered their 60 large cities. When he returned, he was very happy. At that point, he was still very good with the Chacham of Yisrael, and he called them all Amalem. Avoseinu, our fathers who came up from Babel and were poor, and they built the Beis Hamikdash amidst poverty. Hayu ochlim meluchim. This man show you asukim b'binyan beis mikdash. When they built the beis mikdash, they were happy. They couldn't afford much, but they would eat like salty vegetables, herring. Well, not even that. That meluchim was like meluchim normally can mean herring, but here he's talking about vegetables. They didn't have much to eat. They were poor kind of vegetables, maybe salted vegetables. And from this afanu. So even though now we are celebrating, we're in much better shape, but we should also rejoice in the same manner. Afanu nochum meluchim. We should also eat salty vegetables. Zeichel avasenu. As a remembrance to our fathers. And they brought out these salty vegetables on golden tables. And they ate. There was one person there, Ish Letz, a joker, Levra, with a bad heart of Lial, a sinner. Elazar ben Pu'ira Shmo. His name was Elazar ben Pu'ira, bad guy. Elazar ben Pu'ira Yanai Amelech. Yanai Amelech. Libam shal Prushim Alecha. The Prushim were the religious rabbis. We have today also the Prushim, like the old community in Yerushalayim called Prushim. They're against you. You should know they're against you. They're not in favor of you. Ma'asa. So what should I do? How should I do to show if they're loyal or not? Hakim lahem betzitz shebeinecha. Make them stand up and wear the tzitz. Now Yanai was the king, but he was also the Kohen Gadol. He appointed himself Kohen Gadol. So so he says wear the tzitz that the Kohen Gadol wears. Wear it, between your eyes, meaning on your forehead. And even though he wasn't doing the avot at that point, but we learned that Kohanim are allowed to wear, the big dekuna even when they're not actually doing the avodah. So Hakim Lam tzitz shebein enough. So he put the tzitz on and forced them all to stand. Hayisham Zokanech, and one of the older rabbis, the Yehuda ben Gedidya Shmo, that was named Yomei Yehuda Gedidya Melech Tetekin Yanai Melech. Rav Lecha Keser Malchus. It's enough that you wear the crown of majesty, that you wear the crown of the monarchy of kingdom, that you're the king. That's enough. Ahanach Keser Kahuna Lazar Shel Aaron. Leave the Keser Kahuna for the children of Aaron. He was from the Maccabean, but leave it for the Lazar Shel Aaron. For the real Zerah of Aaron. Why? Why wasn't he Zerah of Aaron? Shayom. They used to say, Imo Nishbas Modiim. They said that his mother was captured by the Goyim in that place in Modiim, and therefore she's considered a zona that they abused her. And even if a Kohen sleeps with a zona, the child is a halal. So even if his father was a Kohen, he's not a Kohen. So this Yehuda ben Gudya told him, you know what? It's enough that you're the king. You wear the royal crown. Don't wear the crown, the priestly crown. Leave that for the Zara of Aaron because you're not really Zara Shel Aaron because you're a halal. That's what he told him. Vayivukash hadavar sounds like from the Purim, from Megillah. Vayivukash hadavar, you must say, right? Vayivukash, they checked it up below Nimtza. They couldn't find proof that he was actually, that his mother was abducted and was defiled by the Goyim, and therefore he would be halal. They couldn't. But still, Vayibadu Chachmei Yisrael Bazam. But at that point, if the whole thing, in other words, when he was accused of being a halal, a non-kosher Kohen, and they did a whole investigation. They couldn't find proof that he was, but the Chachmei Yisrael left by the anger. Yanai was obviously angry at them for calling him a non-Kohen. Vayomer Elazar ben Pu'ira Yanai Melech. Elazar ben Pu'ira, again, this bad, evil person told Yanai, he was this instigator. Yanai Melech, Hey Sheb Yisrael Kachu Dino. Is this even a normal, regular, common person, a commoner? Is that his way to absorb this shame and being called like like almost being called a mamzer? That the way you're being treated. Va'ata Melech Kohen Gadol. You're the king and the Kohen Gadol. Kachu Dincha, is that you're just going to absorb that shame that they're hurling accusations that you're not really a Kohen? So Yanai Melech said, so what should I do? If you listen to my advice, Rome saying, trample them, kill them all, kill all these rabbis. The Torah Matei. So what's going to be with the Torah if we kill all the rabbis? But the Torah's right here. Sefer Torah in the Aron Kodesh, it's in the corner here. What do you want the Torah? The Torah's still there. Whoever wants to learn the Torah, open up the scroll of the Torah and they'll learn. What's your problem? You don't need the rabbis. At that point, Apikursus entered him this Yanai Melech. We should have said Tanach Torah Shabbat. That's Torah Shabbat, Torah Shabbat, my. What's with the Torah Shabbat Peh? If you kill all the rabbis, what with the Torah Shabbat Peh? So that's what that's what Yanai should have answered, and he didn't. But what happened? Instead, he killed all the rabbis. Miyad, right away, Batutzat Hara al Yidei Elazar, and the evil, like the spark, came out and burned through Elazar and Purah. Vayargu Kochach Yisrael, and they were all killed. And Vaya Ola Mishtamim, the world was desolate. Achava Shimon ben Shatach. Shimon ben Shatach was actually Yanai HaMelech's wife's brother, right? She had hid him away, and he was saved until he came. He returned it to its original glory. Now that was the story. That was the story with Yanai HaMelech. What does all this have to do with us? Question is, how did they claim that his mother, that he was born a halal, that his mother had been captured by the goyim, in which you could assume that she was defiled? If two people said she was captured by the goyim, why do you rely on these two who said that she wasn't? You could also be that. Why do you rely on the ones who said she wasn't captured? Maybe rely on the ones who said she was captured. So why do you say they checked it out and they couldn't find any evidence? Like they're saying now, there's no evidence that that Iran was behind the whole thing. There's no solid evidence. Yeah, he puts himself in that position. We don't have any solid proof. We don't have a document. Like they don't know. So he says, why do you have no evidence? So if it's 2 against 2, why do you rely on the ones who said that she wasn't captured? You should rely on the ones who says that he was captured. Rashi points out, why don't you say 2 against 2 and leave the woman in a chazaka? And the chazaka says that in the chazaka she was cautious. Come on. If the woman would be here, and 2 people say that she was defiled and 2 people say she wasn't, so you could say she has a chazaka. 2 against 2, they cancel each other out, and she has a chazaka presumption that she was pure. But here we're judging her son. We're saying he was born already to be a kind of a bastard, a halal, a non-kosher Kohen. So he doesn't have a presumption of purity. So if it's 2 against 2, why do you rely on these? You should rely on those. So how do you say it was found out? There was no evidence. There is 2 who say that she was defiled. So Elamite speaking about it. Here's what must have happened. 1 aide said that she was defiled. She was taken into captivity. And why did they counter? Why did they push aside that testimony? The Kamakish trade, because 2 people were against it. 2 people said, no, it wasn't true. She wasn't taken into captivity. It wouldn't be for that. And haven't you be believed? This is a biased proof. He says, because they checked it out. Now, how did they check it out? If it's 2 against 2, why do they rely on the people who say she wasn't taken into captivity? Rely on the others who she was. There's a question whether he was a proper Kohen or not. Elamai must be that 1 aide said she was taken into captivity. 2 people say she wasn't. Oh, so the 2 people knocked off the 1 aide. But if it wouldn't be for the 2 people knock him off, we would have accepted the testimony of 1 aide who said that she was defiled. That's a biased proof. Rava says no. Lolam Tre, there were 2 against 2. Like Rav Meir explains in other cases, sometimes 2 against 2 is only if they both come at the same time and they give a counter, or even not exactly at the same time, but they both counter one another. He did kill him, he didn't kill him. However, Rav Meir says if it's Be'eri Azama, remember if the latter 2 come and say Imano Ayisa, you were with us, that's Mazim. The Torah says you believe the second group. That's why I believe. So it was 2 against 2. It's not a case of 1 aide at all. Or you could say it wasn't actually 2 against 2. It was 2 people said we saw the woman who looked to be like the princess, like the queen taken into captivity. The other says no. The other 2 said it looked like that, but they really stuck a bondwoman, a slave, in place of her. In other words, they exchanged the queen for a slave woman, so a double, so that they wouldn't, so that the queen wouldn't be defiled. So, and that's how they turned. That's how it was found to be that the mother was not really defiled by the goyim, because she was never really taken to captivity. Rashi says even if she was taken, they switched her. They did a switch. Rashi says last Rashi on the page. They thought the first 2 witnesses said the queen was taken to captivity was her. They thought, they thought that she was the goyim who captured thought that she was the queen. They took the queen, after she was taken in captivity, before they had a chance to do anything for below. There's no contradiction by the Edom themselves because they put a shifcha in her place. Right. Or the queen was taken, but they did a switch on her before there was any chance of confusion. So therefore, it's no proof at all according to Rav, because it's not a case of 1A. Again, Rav Abai started off the Shiur today by saying that if 1A says that this woman committed adultery or was defiled or whatever, you have to accept that unless you contradict it. If you're quiet, you don't say anything. You have to accept that and divorce the wife. Rava says no, you need 2 witnesses. Amar Rava. Now Rava says I'll bring a proof my way. How do I know that you need 2? On the top of Amid base. Now the Tanan, Amar Rab Shimon. Maisa, there was a story like this. Maisa b'Megura shel Diskim. Diskim was a name of a place or name of a person, and he had a big reservoir there that was used as a mikveh. The Yavna. He had a big reservoir in Ravna. It was assumed that it was a proper mikveh. It had 40 saw of water. Umadadu, and people went to the mikveh there. They took kalim, they went themselves. Umadadu, then they measured it. The nimtzis chasera was missing. It didn't have 40 saw. So what happened? So what about the people who went to that mikveh? Right. So we was this question: what's we have this issue that the mikveh, right, had a presumption of kashrus until it was found otherwise, but the people or the items that went into the mikveh had a presumption of tumah. That's why they went to the mikveh. So now that it was found it was missing. Tarfon said that things that were people or items that went into the mikveh were tar, because the mikveh had a presumption of being kosher until now. Now it was found. So from here on out, we know that you can't use the mikveh until it's filled up with 40 saw. Rabbi Kiva said no. Items that went in there are tamei, because there's a presumption that the item was tamei and the person was tamei, and he went into a mikveh that wasn't kosher. Amar Tarfon. Mikveh zeh b'cheskeshon. Rav Tarfon says no, that the people or the items that went in there are tahor. The mikveh had a chazaka that it was complete, that it was full, that it was that it wasn't missing any water on it. Misafek at the balachasro. Now misafek, you're not sure when did it lose its 40 saw. When did it go from 40 down to below 40 saw? At what point? You don't know when. Alta chasron misafek. You can't assume that people went to the mikveh last week. It was already less than 40. You had a presumption of 40 until we measured it now. Therefore, everybody who went in there is tar. Amar Bekiva says, Adam zeh b'cheskes tameo. Look at the person. The person of chazaka that was tamei. B'cheskes tameo. He had a presumption that he's tamei. Misafek ata balataro. Now you want to be matar him misafek because he went into a mikveh, but the mikveh is not kosher. Alta tran misafek. In other words, you look. Chazaka is a strong thing, right? A presumption. So you look at the chazaka of the mikveh. The mikveh had a presumption of kashrus until now. But the person didn't have a chazak of kashrus. Rav Akiva looks at the person. Rav Tarfon looks at the mikveh. Rav Tarfon, Rav Tarfon gave an example. Mashal omei umakar b'gam mizbeach. A person is bringing a carbon on the mizbeach that only kohanim are allowed to do. But notice ben grusha chalutza. It turns out that he's a ben grusha ben chalutza. That means that he's a halal. Halal by chalutza it's rabbanan, by grusha it's doraisa. But it turns out he's not a proper kohen. Shavadasik shera. The rule is, we'll see later on based on a pasuk, that his avodah is kosher. So again, it's the same kind of a thing. There was a chazaka when he went up to do the avodah that he was kosher, and then it turned out that it's not. So his avodah is kosher. Rabbi Kiva says, no, I'll give you a different example. Mashal la'omed. The example is, the metaphor is this: la'omed u'makar b'gam mizbeach. He's giving a carbon on mizbeach. V'noshu bal mum. Turns out he's a bal mum. He has a blemish. He's not a proper kohen. Shavodasa psula. Now, in both cases. In the case of Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza, he was no good from birth, yet his avodah is good. Balmum could be from birth, could be after birth, but his avodah is puzzle there. So which way do you look at it? Amr Tarfon says, okay, I brought an example showing that the person should be okay from Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza. You brought an example from Balmum. Amr Tarfon, Ata Dimisul Balmum, you compare it to Balmum. I compare it to Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza, and as a Balmum's avodah was no good, Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza was okay if we didn't know till it was found out afterwards. Nira lemidoma. Let's see which one's more comparable. Which one is this example? This example of going to the mikveh that turns out now that it wasn't a kosher mikveh. But when he went in, we thought it was a kosher mikveh. But the person had a chazaka that he was tamei when he went to the mikveh. So which one is it more comparable? Nira lemidoma, idoma leben grusha ben chalutza. If our example of going to the mikveh is more comparable to ben grusha ben chalutza, then the daughter ben grusha chalutza needs to say that it's kosher, just like a ben grusha ben chalutza's avoda is kosher. If he found that afterwards, same thing here. The mikveh's tara should help to purify this person. Im doma the balmum, if it's more comparable to balmum, to a person who has a blemish, and daughter balmum, we'll compare it to balmum and say that it's no good. So let's see, let's analyze it. His Rabbi Kiva says, fine, I'll show you how it's more comparable to a balmum. Mikvah psul b'yachid. How do you disqualify a mikvah? By one person saying it's chaser, right? If one person says that the mikvah is not kosher, I checked it, you believe him. Like Rashi says, if he says, listen, I measured the mikvah. The guy went to the mikvah, he had all these people and women went to the mikvah. The next day, this guy, or later on, the guy says, I measured the mikvah. The mikvah doesn't have 40 saw, right? Or he said, I measured even before. Do you believe him? One person? Yeah. So mikvah can be disqualified by one person. And a balmum, if one person says he's a balmum, we're going to say, what did he say? We'll say that in a minute. A balmum also, he becomes disqualified if one person testifies that he has a mum. And you can't prove a ben grusha ben chalutza who only becomes puzzle if there are two people who testify that he was a ben grusha ben chalutza. How do two people testify he was ben grusha ben chalutza? They say that we know his mother, right? We know his mother. His mother was a grusha, let's say, and she married a Cohen. We know that. We didn't. Nobody else knew that here. Right? A guy shows up and he says, "I'm a Cohen." You let him duch and everything. Then somebody shows him and says, "No. I know that his father was married to a grusha." You need two witnesses for that. Okay. So here, Rabbi Kiva says, "I'll show you why this case is more comparable to a balmum than to a ben grusha mechlutza, because ben grusha mechlutza, in order to establish that he's a ben grusha, you have to have two witnesses. But a mikveh is disqualified by one, and a balmum is disqualified by one. So we should compare it to balmum, and therefore say that the mikveh did not work, that the person is tamei. That's one proof that Rabbi Kiva says. Davar acher, another proof that it should be more comparable to a balmum. Mikveh psul b'gufo. The mikveh, what's the psul in the disqualification? What's the psul over here? The mikveh itself, it doesn't have 40 saw. Balmum also, psul b'gufo. Something's wrong with his body. He has a blemish. The psul came from somebody else. It is from his parents. Nothing is wrong with him per se. He looks like every other Kohen, but it's his parents who came along. That's because of his mother. His mother shouldn't have gotten married to his father. So those are the two proofs that Rabbi Akiva counters Reb Tarfon with. Amalei Reb Tarfon then agreed with Akiva. Says Akiva, whoever leaves your side is like leaving life. You're so good. You're brilliant. Okay, that was the story. So he agreed with Rabbi Akiva that tummy. Now he said over there though, when Rabbi Akiva brought the proofs, he said the balmum is puzzled by one. Right, one person can say you're a balmum. And that's good enough. When you say he's puzzled with one person, what are we talking about? Either if the guy says, I'm not a balmum, well, is somebody believed to say you're a balmum, that you have some mum hidden under your clothes, and the guy says, no, it's not true. Why would you believe the 1A? Ella the Shosik must be they're talking about a case where 1A accused him of being a balmum, and he was quiet. Udekavasa, Gabe ben Grusha ben Chalutza. And the similar case would be what by Ben Grusha ben Chalutza, the equivalent case would be the Shasik, in other words, where two people say he's a Ben Grusha ben Chalutza, and he was quiet. Viktani, mikvah psula b'yachid, u'balmum psula b'yachid. The comparable cases was mikvah is disqualified by one person, saying that there's no 40 saw there, and a balmum is disqualified by one person, by the person himself, the balmum being quiet. Don't prove ben grusha. So psul b'shnayim. You need two people to say he's a ben grusha, even though he denies it. So what do you see? This is Rava's proof. Rava said, "How do I know that one person isn't believed? Even if the person himself is quiet, doesn't say anything, he doesn't know. But that was what we started by saying. One person says your wife committed adultery. Abaye says you believe him. If you don't say anything, you don't count him. You believe me after the divorce. Rabbi says no. Here you see when it comes to saying that there was a forbidden marriage, that there was some forbidden relationship over here. You need two people. He says because when it comes to a balmum, all you need is one person. If the guy doesn't say anything, all you need is one person. If he's quiet. But when it comes to Ben Berush and Chalutza, you need two people. This is my proof that one person is not enough to disqualify, to dissolve a marriage. To force a divorce. One person is not enough because you need two people over here. Abaye will say no. Abaye, who claims that one person is enough. No, this isn't the case where 1-8 or 2-8 said something and the other person was quiet. The person himself, the object, was quiet. No, over here, the balmum says no. I'm not a balmum. Uda kamer to my mehemen, because we said it must be speaking about whether the guy's quiet. Because if he wasn't quiet, you accuse me of being a balmum. If I say I'm not a balmum, why would you believe that one person? I say I'm not. The reason Uda kamer to my mehemen, why we believe the 8. The Amrlei Shalach Achve, because he said, you're not a balmum, take off your clothes, strip, let us check you out. He didn't want to. In other words, the reason we believe the 1-8 is because the other guy doesn't want to take his clothes off. He doesn't want to show, he doesn't want to reveal if he has really reveal if he has a mum or not. Pardon?
Maybe I'm wrong. The things that disqualify a Kohen are things that you see.
No, it doesn't have to. Okay. You mean if it's under his clothes? No, it could be that if he has some disfigurement. There are the ones that the Torah enumerates are like Bosein and things like that. But it could be that he has a balmum, that he's a balmum, even a place where let's say you could see it, or maybe he doesn't want to show, even a place where it could be evident. Let's say it's behind his ear or something like that, and his head. And he's covered up. He's got a big hood on or something of that sort. Could be. It could be. If it's not in a place, if it's in a place that doesn't have it, maybe it's on his feet or something like that, and his shoes are on or something of that sort. That you don't see it evident. But it doesn't mean that anything that under his clothes, but it could be on his feet or something like that. He might have some disfigurement or a club foot or something of that sort. So so therefore, this is not a case where he doesn't say anything, where the man doesn't say, the object doesn't say he's quiet. It's not a case like that. It's talking about a case where he objects. The reason you believe him is because there's evidence to believe him, because the guy won't take off his clothes to show if he's really a balmum or not. Behind the Tani mikvah psula begufo. That's what we mean. The mikvah is psula beguf, balmum psula begufo. It's in his guf. Because this is on his guf and we should be able to see it, and he won't show it to us, and therefore that's why we believe the 8 echad there. The Gemara says, okay, fine. So each one brought his proof, each one understood the other way. And we pass like Rava, you need 2 Adam to force a dissolution of the marriage. But how do we know this? How do we know that Ben Gushman and Chalutza, even though you don't allow him to do the avoda, but if he did the avoda, you don't say you have to bring another carbon in his place. And the pasuk says, it'll be when I'm talking about Pinchas Benos Ben Arakan says, Bains are kosher, bains are apostle. In other words, whatever zera he had, even if it's a psul to some degree, obviously not if it's a mamzer or something of that sort, but if it's a psul in kahuna that he's a halal, it's also it's okay. The avodah is kosher. Avodah Shmuel Amar this pasuk, Baruch Hashem Chelo, Hashem will bless his substance. Upal Yadav in the work of his the work of his hands. So you will accept. Afilu chulin shabo. Chelo means even chulin shabo tirza. Even if he's really a non-kosher Kohen, he's not a proper Kohen. He's a mechulal. Also, it's accepted. And you come to the Kohen who will be at that time. Can you go to a Kohen who's not there in your time if he's in a different generation? You can't. Elazek kosher v'nis chalel. He's not a proper Kohen. It's a kosher v'nis chalel, and that's what you mean. Kohen. That's what means basal Kohen asher yiyeh. Even though he's not a proper Kohen, but you can go to him anyway. You can do the avoda. That's as far as a Ben Gushman Chalutza whose avoda is kosher. A balmum devaras psulim. How do we know that a balmum is avoda is possible? Rabbi Shmuel, the pasuk says lachein amor. Again, this is again by Pinchas, the beginning of Pinchas. Lachein amor Hinanino signal as briefly shalom. I give him my covenant in peace. Shu darshan shalom to be shalem. Shu shalem doksha chaser. If he's a full body. In other words, there's nothing missing. His body is perfect. Not if he's missing something, like missing a limb. I va shalom ksiv, right? It says shalom. It doesn't say shalom. Rav Nachman vav the shalom katir. The vav in shalom is partially cut off. I'm not sure if it's that. I was like in our Torah, but it's partially cut off to show that it means shalom. A little space there between the top and the bottom. Yeah. So therefore, that's Idasha that's shalem. Therefore, he has to be shalem. If he's not shalem, he can be missing a finger, missing a foot, or something of that sort. So in a chanami, it's something to be revealed, but maybe his clothes are covering him up, and therefore you can't tell. Now, interesting that we say here that we were just talking about that if one person can disqualify or force a marriage into dissolution based on his testimony alone. So here we're going to talk about these kinds of cases where we're talking about a halal, right? That he says that either the wife committed adultery, which would force her out, or talking about mamzeros and halal. So here the Gemara, the Mishnah gives the famous Mishnah giving the rules of relationships. If Kiddushin could take place, there's no Aveir involved in the Kiddushin. In other words, it's not a Grusha marrying a Kohen, it's a regular person. Which we know. If a Kohen marries a Yisraelis, the child's a Kohen. If a Levi marries a Bas Kohen, the child's a Levi. If Yisrael marries a Bas Levi, the child's a Yisrael. It goes according to the male, the father. The Ezuzuzu Kahanas Levi Yisrael. So it's either whatever the wife is, Shanas Kohen Levi Yisrael, goes according to the husband. As we know, what you are, whether you're a Kohen Levi Yisrael, goes according to the father. And Rashi over here says, Kedushin would be Chavein Aveir Benasuin Shalo Asr Torah. Why didn't it say the Mefarshim? Why didn't it just say Kol Makom Sheyesh Kedushin or Kol Makom that there is actually Kedushin? Why do you say Kol Makom Sheyesh Kedushin? Lama Kol Kedushin. Why don't you say Kol Kedushin? Every Kedushin that didn't have an Aveira, he goes according to the father. He wants to tell you Kol Makom Sheyesh Kedushin, meaning even if it wasn't, they didn't actually have Kedushin, but the Kedushin, if they would make Kedushin, it would be a proper Kedushin. Loma Kedushin she'ein b'aveira lefi shekiyum haKedushin b'fol ein meshanas kriyas din avlad. Meaning this: a Kohen sleeps with the Israelis out of wedlock, right? They have a relationship, and the child is born. Right? They could get married, but they never got married. The child's still a Kohen, because all you need is the potential. There would be Kedushin. They ain't Aveir. If they would get married, there would be no Aveir involved. The child is a Kohen. You don't say, well, they weren't married. It doesn't go that way. If Kedushin would take place, Kedushin will work, and there's no Aveir if they would get married. The child just goes according to the father. Yeah, of course. We're talking about when you know the father. Of course. If you don't know who the father is, then you're really in trouble, right? Homakim Sheish Kedushin. Right? If you don't know who the father is, you're in trouble. The kid could be a mamzer. The kid could be anything. But if the mother's Jewish, at least the kid's Jewish. But the kid could be who knows what. Let's say there is kedushin. Kedushin's chal. Now we're not going like Rabbi Kiva who holds that there's a mamzer b'chayalavim, but we hold like us that say that. There's kedushin chal even by a chayvalav. There's kedushin, but there's an aveira. The blood goes according to the one who's damaged, the one who's defective. Let's say a Mara marries a Kohen Gadol, the child's a halal, meaning after the pagum, the almana, the one who is defective, or the grusha chalutza, Kohen Hagel, child is defective, goes according to the pagum. Mamzeres Masili Yisrael. If a mamzer marries a Yisrael, or bas Yisrael a mamzer a sin. If a mamzer marries a Yisraelis, if the husband's a mamzer or the wife is a mamzer, the child's a mamzer, because that's what we said. When there is kedushin is chal, but it's baveira. They shouldn't have got married to him. The child gets the categories characterized as the pagum. So if the father's a mamzer, the child's a mamzer. If the mother's a mamzer, the child's a mamzer. That's really the only people that mamzer should marry is another mamzer, but we'll see. Right? Okay. So that's in a case like that. So the child goes according to the pagum. Kol misha ain alav kedushin, ain lo alav kedushin, and what happens if kedushin wouldn't be chal, right? Avayesh Allah ala chayrim, but she could marry somebody else. Right? She could marry somebody. She just can't marry this one. Havlad mamzer. The kid there is a mamzer automatically. Not that the mamzer goes according to the Bible. God's a mamzer. He says, man marries his sister, right? What's the kid? A mamzer. Now, she's not forbidden to marry anybody. She can marry whoever she wants, but she can't marry a close relationship, right? Consanguineous relationship, right? She can't marry somebody in the family. So that's what we say. In other words, where kedushin is not chal. When do you make a mamzer? Either if one of the parents was a mamzer, right? And if both parents were mamzerim, they can marry one another. Your mamzer's no fault of their own. The one that they should marry, we'll see if there's machlok, they can marry a ger. But a mamzer, best person to marry is another mamzer. But then the kid's a mamzer. There was no there. The kedushin was valid, right? Kedushin was totally valid. And yeah, the child's like the father. He's a mamzer, right? That fits in Komak and Shesh Kedushin. There's no Avera there. It goes according to Zachar. If, let's say, it's a Yisrael marrying a mamzeres, well, that shouldn't have taken place. The child becomes a mam, goes according to the pagum. The pagum is the mother who's a mamzeres. So when Kedushin would not be chal, like you're marrying somebody you can't marry, you're marrying your wife's sister while your wife is still alive, or you're marrying your sister. All these things are Karis and Kedushin is not chal. The kid would become a mamzer. Right, that's the kid's a mamzer. She can marry somebody else. Whatever happens if there's a woman who can't? Not only can't she marry this person because he's a close relative, she can't marry anybody. She's not allowed to marry anybody. In that case, Havlad most of the child is like her. And what's that? Zavlad shifcha v'nachris. Let's say she's a shifcha. She can't marry any Jew. Shifcha is not allowed to marry any Jew. She can marry an Evet Knani, another Evet. She can't marry any Jew. Or a shiksa, a nachris, can't marry any Jew. So if you marry there, if a shifra gets married to Yisrael, or a nachris, a shiksa marries to Yisrael, the child is like her. That's the famous thing. That's the way to be Matara Mamzer. We'll talk about that famous thing. The very Matara Mamzer is that he can marry a shifra. A mamzer can marries a shifra, whether he's allowed to or not, that's a question. Lachatchila. But if he marries a shifra, the child is a eved. Then the eved is freed, and then the freed eved is a full Jew, without being a mamzer. So the Gemara is going to deal with this. We'll deal with this these cases tomorrow. Is this valid for all these rules and regulations that we give? Yes, generally they're true. Are they valid in all cases? That's what we're going to deal with tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem. All right. Have a good day, everybody. Kol tov.